Let's talk about Russia, a country that dominates the map, stretching across 2 continents and 11 time zones. Its sheer size is legendary, and it's a nation that has always loomed large in the world's imagination. It's big, so big you could fit the entire United States inside it with room to spare. In fact, you could fit not just the US, but also China, India, and much of Europe, and still have land left over. Russia's vastness is almost hard to comprehend. For centuries, this immense size has been Russia's ultimate superpower, its secret weapon against invaders. From Napoleon to Hitler, armies have tried to conquer it, only to be defeated by the endless distances and brutal winters. Armies have charged in, only to be swallowed by the vast, unforgiving landscape. The land itself became a shield, a silent ally that wore down even the most determined enemies. But what if, in the 21st century, that massive size is no longer an asset? In a world where technology shrinks distances and speed is everything, could Russia's greatest strength now be its biggest weakness? What if, in its war against Ukraine, Russia's size is now a self-inflicted wound? The very distances that once protected it now stretch its resources thin, making every mile a challenge. Modern warfare relies on speed, precision, and complex supply chains, things that don't always play well with a country built for a different era. Moving troops and equipment across such vast spaces is a logistical nightmare. The war in Ukraine has exposed a military supposedly one of the world's most powerful stumbling in ways that have baffled experts. Delays, confusion, and supply shortages have become all too common. Could Russia simply be too big to fight this kind of war effectively? When every front is hundreds or even thousands of miles apart, coordination becomes a monumental task. Are logistics, coordination, and economic strain all conspiring to undermine its efforts? The cost of moving men and machines across such distances is staggering, and the economic pressure is mounting. It's time to question the old assumption that for Russia, bigger is always better. In today's world, size can be a double-edged sword, impressive but also unwieldy and difficult to manage. Maybe, just maybe, Goliath is tripping over his own enormous feet. In the modern era, being the biggest doesn't always mean being the strongest. To understand why Russia's sheer size was once its greatest advantage, we need to look back at some of history's most ambitious invasions. Throughout the centuries, Russia's vastness has been both a shield and a weapon, shaping the fate of empires that dared to cross its borders. Take Napoleon in 1812. He marched into Russia with one of the largest armies Europe had ever seen, expecting a swift and glorious victory. Instead, he found himself lost in endless empty space, facing a relentless and unforgiving winter that seemed to stretch on forever. His troops were stretched thin across the vast landscape, supply lines broke down, and soldiers starved or froze. The immense distances and harsh climate destroyed his army long before Russian forces could finish the job. The land itself became his deadliest enemy. Fast forward to 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, convinced he could succeed where Napoleon failed. The Soviets responded by trading space for time, retreating deep into their own territory. They dismantled entire factories and moved them thousands of kilometers east, beyond the reach of German bombers, sacrificing land but preserving their ability to fight. Russia's strategic depth allowed its armies to retreat, regroup, and then launch powerful counterattacks. The invaders were forced to chase them across endless forests, swamps, and steppes, wearing themselves out with every mile. The enemy's strength was sapped not just by battle, but by the sheer effort of crossing the immense landscape through mud, snow, and biting cold. For centuries, Russia's size wasn't just a geographic fact, it was the foundation of its military strategy, a natural fortress that no invader could easily conquer. The land itself became a weapon, grinding down the ambitions of the world's greatest empires and forcing them into retreat, often in defeat and disarray. Invaders didn't just fight Russian soldiers, they battled the endless expanse, the brutal winters, and the isolation that came with every step deeper into the country. That was the old playbook, using the land itself as a shield and a sword. And for generations it worked, shaping the destiny of Russia and its would-be conquerors. So, what changed? Modern warfare did. The nature of conflict has evolved dramatically in the 21st century, and with it, the challenges facing even the largest militaries have multiplied. Russia's old advantage, its sheer size and resources, has fractured into 3 major headaches: logistics, military coordination, and economic strain. Let's start with logistics, the lifeblood of any modern army. A modern army needs fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, and medical supplies in staggering quantities every single day. The scale is almost unimaginable. Thousands of tons of material must move constantly to keep the front lines operational. Moving a single tank from Siberia to Ukraine is a monumental task involving trains, trucks, and careful planning. Multiply that by hundreds of vehicles and the challenge becomes clear. Supplying an entire army on the front lines day after day is a logistical nightmare. Delays or disruptions can mean the difference between victory and defeat. Next, military coordination. Russia's vast military is divided into sprawling districts, each with its own command structure. This makes unified action across the entire force extremely difficult, especially in fast-moving conflicts. Communication lags are common, and units often operate with different tactics, incompatible equipment, and even conflicting orders. This lack of cohesion can lead to confusion and costly mistakes on the battlefield. It's like trying to conduct an orchestra scattered across a continent, with each section playing from a different sheet of music. Finally, the economic strain. Wars are expensive, and fighting far from industrial centers only makes the costs skyrocket. Every mile further from home means more fuel, more maintenance, and more risk. Every shell, every truck, every gallon of fuel must travel immense distances, multiplying costs and stretching supply lines to the breaking point. Sanctions have cut off vital revenue streams and access to modern technology, forcing Russia to fund a colossal war effort while its economy is under siege from all sides. The vastness that once protected Russia now drains it, turning its greatest asset into a massive liability. The old superpower is now weighed down by the very things that once made it formidable, a logistical and financial burden that grows heavier with every passing day. Russia's logistical problems in Ukraine were symbolized by the infamous 40-mile convoy stuck outside Kiev. It wasn't just bad luck, it was a failure to plan for basics like fuel and maintenance. Russia's military logistics depend on railways, but once troops leave the trains, they rely on old trucks and vulnerable roads. This last-mile problem means Russian forces are tethered to their railheads, unable to advance far without outrunning supplies. The result? A slow, grinding war, reliant on artillery because it's easier to supply shells to fixed positions. Every mile forward stretches the logistical leash tighter. Replacing destroyed equipment is slow. Tanks must travel thousands of miles from depots deep in Russia. The vast homeland becomes a time-sucking obstacle. Russian units are worn down faster than they can be reinforced. Coordinating a modern military is complex. Russia's size makes it even harder. The armed forces are split into massive districts, but in Ukraine, this has led to a command and control nightmare. Different districts launched separate attacks with little coordination, leaving units unsupported and vulnerable. The rigid top-down command culture discourages initiative, so when communication breaks down, units are left stranded. Senior generals have had to go to the front lines just to get things moving, often at great risk. Units from different regions train in isolation, with different standards and equipment. Bringing them together is like assembling furniture from mismatched kits. The result, a lack of cohesion and persistent weakness on the battlefield. Russia's vastness, once a strength, now fragments its own military. War is hideously expensive, and Russia's geography multiplies the cost. Every tank, every soldier, every drop of fuel must travel thousands of kilometers before even reaching the fight. This logistical tax drains the national treasury. Russia's natural resources fund the war, but extracting and transporting them is costly, especially under sanctions. The government has ramped up military spending, diverting funds from healthcare, infrastructure, and pensions. Fragile regions are pushed to the breaking point as the war drains the economy. It's a vicious cycle. War weakens the economy. A weaker economy struggles to support the war. Russia is fighting a war of attrition not just against Ukraine, but against its own geography and economy. The real question, how long can Russia sustain this economic hemorrhage? It's not all downside. Russia's size still brings real advantages. Strategic depth means it can absorb losses and retreat without collapsing. Its vast population and resources allow it to keep fighting, even after setbacks. The state can mobilize more troops, and its territory holds immense reserves of oil, gas, and minerals. The core of Russia's power, Moscow and the Urals, is far from the front, making direct threats difficult. This security lets the Kremlin take risks and sustain a long war. Russia's size is central to its national identity and propaganda, projecting an aura of invincibility. It intimidates opponents and reassures its own population. These advantages are real and shouldn't be dismissed, but they're not the whole story. Russia's size still offers classic advantages, but in Ukraine, those strengths are less decisive than ever. The old playbook, trading space for time, doesn't work when Russia is the invader, not the defender. All the logistical and command problems are magnified by having to project power outward. The war is fought on Ukraine's terms, with defenders enjoying short supply lines and local knowledge. Modern warfare rewards precision, agility, and real-time intelligence, qualities Ukraine has used to devastating effect. Russia's massive stockpiles of old tanks are a blunt instrument in a war that rewards surgical strikes. Sanctions have cut off access to critical components, crippling Russia's ability to produce advanced weaponry. Its vast size can't compensate for a lack of microchips and modern tech. The globalized world has shrunk Russia's economic advantage. In this war, being big isn't enough. For centuries, Russia's size was its shield and sword, a bottomless well of soldiers and resources. But the war in Ukraine shows that this great strength can become a weakness. Logistics, command, and economic burdens now weigh down the Colossus. The old advantages haven't vanished, but they're eroding fast in the face of modern warfare and global sanctions. Russia's ability to absorb losses still matters, but it's no longer invincible. The fundamentals of power have shifted. Efficiency, technology, and adaptability now matter more than sheer landmass. Russia may be discovering that in the modern era, being big is not the same as being strong. Its greatest historical asset may have finally become its own worst enemy.